destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dr. Robert Greene, assistant professor of history at Claflin University in South Carolina, president of the African American Intellectual History Society, on Juneteenth and how to preserve its actual meaning. Then Jaz Brisack, co-founder of Starbucks Workers United, currently in residence at the Berkeley Labor Center, working on developing the Inside Organizer School. Meanwhile, Bibi Netanyahu embraces the embarrasses the Biden administration, and the White House responds strongly by rescheduling a high-level meeting.
That'll show them.
U.S. peer for Gaza aid is falling apart and may be dismantled early. Freedom Caucus chair hangs by a thread in the wake of Tuesday's Virginia primary. And a January 6th defendant handed defeat in a Georgia primary. My guy's last name was Hand. Yeah. Witness tells House Ethics Committee that Matt Gaetz paid her for sex. Trump advisor Boris Epshteyn arraigned in Arizona on felony counts regarding a fake elector scheme. And Donald Trump's faith advisor, founder of a Texas megachurch, resigns after sexual abuse allegations. He has an interesting way of characterizing them, too. Yeah. Amazon labor union votes to affiliate with the Teamsters. And ladies and gentlemen, the first CEMEX bargaining order has been issued by the National Labor Relations Board versus Station Casino. If you don't know what the CEMEX bargaining order is, A, you're getting a demerit. Should know by now after listening to the show. And nevertheless, I'll give you one more opportunity later in the program to find out before we get tested on this next week. Gavin Newsom calls for a smartphone ban in California schools. In Pakistan, Arundhati Roy may face prosecution for comments she made 14 years ago regarding Kashmir. Brad Landers makes it official. He's going to run against Eric Adams. In just a day or two after Bloomberg had a report on the way the NYPD is using its helicopters, and it ain't great. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Emma Vigeland here.
Hello.
To do the honors.
It is Hump Day.
That is right. It is Hump Day, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to get to. And happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. Speaking of that helicopter story, just a good indication of, like, as our teachers get woefully underpaid.
Libraries get shut on the weekends.
Perhaps our police have enough money.
It is, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this right now, but since you brought it up, this is pretty crazy. The amount spent on helicopter rides, essentially, and this is not including the personnel, was $12.4 million in 2023 fiscal year, which was double what it was spent in 2021, the last fiscal year of the de Blasio mayoralty. This is a Bloomberg analysis. There was a 63% increase from 2021 in terms of separate flights and hours in the air. According to the Bloomberg report, sightseeing is exactly what the NYPD seems to be doing, as they've been criticized in the past. Because when they get criticized, they go, hey, we're not up there sightseeing. Well, it turns out, in fact, it looks like that's what they're doing. Quote, the flight records show that many of the department trips left city limits, and some, now, I suppose there could be occasions where you would need to leave city limits, like we're following a car that's speeding across the bridge despite the traffic, the standstill traffic. But left city limits, some follow trajectories that hit multiple city landmarks, like the Statue of Liberty, Yankee Stadium, the Empire State Building, and the World Trade Center. Sometimes, Bloomberg says, the flight records suggest that helicopters are being used to ferry passengers to and from a location, like sort of a taxpayer-funded Blade service. One flight, highlighted in the investigation, zipped out to the Hamptons and back on a Friday evening in August.
Well, you know, the traffic is almost criminal when you're coming back from the Hamptons.
This is where we need that slide whistle.
Wee-oo.
Another went to Philadelphia and then Albany before returning to New York City. Another time, a New York Police Department helicopter just went to Philly and back, so a deputy commissioner could roll up to a gala event in style.
There we go.
Eric Adams has something to account for there. I just, whatever it takes,
Reminder that he's a cop.
Yep.
Reminder that he's a cop. So if these kinds of abuses are happening under his watch, it's probably just because he feels like his buddies over at the NYPD should be able to do what they want.
Sure. And they obviously feel like they can too and get away with it. Meanwhile, yesterday, Bibi Netanyahu put out a video on Twitter that went something like this.
Something like this, and he says it in English.
Yes, this is meant for, I guess,
An American audience.
The primary on Tuesday. I mean, I will say this. Let's play this and we can talk about it.
When Secretary Blinken was recently here in Israel, we had a candid conversation. I said I deeply appreciated the support the U.S. has given Israel from the beginning of the war. But I also said something else. I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies. Secretary Blinken assured me that the administration is working day and night to remove these bottlenecks. I certainly hope that's the case. It should be the case. During World War II, Churchill told the United States, give us the tools, we'll do the job. And I say, give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster.
Aside from the just disgusting, I just find it disgusting to compare what's going on in Gaza today with World War II. It's just appalling.
Buddy, you're not Churchill in this situation. You're on the other side.
Without a doubt. But that aside, the only bombs the U.S. have withheld from Israel are 2,000-pound bombs, which the U.S. military has publicly said have no reason to be deployed in Gaza.
Which is the size of Detroit.
And almost are de facto human rights violations, or I should say rules of war violations. I mean, to the extent that anybody's following that in this conflict. But because of the how densely populated they are there. And, I'm of two minds about this because I can't help but think that maybe the Biden administration wants to pretend like they're actually doing something But they seem supposedly, the White House was enraged, according to
by the statement.
Axios.
Accusation.
President Biden's top advisors were enraged by the video. A message U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein delivered personally to Netanyahu in a meeting hours after it was published. Two U.S. and an Israeli source say the White House decided to go a step farther by canceling Thursday's meeting, which was, I'm not even clear on who was supposed to be a high-level meeting. They'll reschedule it. It'll end up being, following Tuesday. But this is embarrassing for the United States. I mean, we're already past the point where, and maybe that's, I don't know, not terribly relevant, all things considered. But here is a piece by Thomas Friedman, and God forbid. But when you've lost Thomas Friedman on this question, folks, you know you've got a problem. Indeed, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who has made 8 trips to Israel since October 7th, should not make another one without Israel and Hamas agreeing to a clear war-ending plan. He is debasing his and his U.S. power. This is ultimatum time. Biden should be telling Israel that it should accept Hamas's key demand, totally end the war now and withdraw from Gaza in exchange for all the return of all Israeli hostages. Israel cannot think straight while Hamas holds its people. I would take issue with the fact that we're going to pretend that Israel is just in a state of disarray and they can't do it. I mean, this is
exactly what the state of Israel has been building towards since its founding, in my opinion.
And the idea that, of course, Friedman knows Hamas has already agreed to what Friedman has suggested here. But, and as much as I loathe Thomas Friedman, they listened to him when he said, get into a war. Maybe they'll listen to him when he says, get out of a war.
This is in the New York Times opinion pages. That's the kind of thing where the White House may actually listen, not crazy internet lefties like us.
We got to find out if, Morning Joe read that story, but we'll see.
But hopefully they cover the fact that the United Nations Human Rights Council today said that they concluded this morning Israeli authorities are guilty of war crimes against humanity, including extermination. So we're getting to a point right here where it's irrefutable. And if only you're concerned about U.S. empire, as Friedman makes that case, you should be deeply concerned because of this.
And also, from an electoral standpoint, remember Joe Biden's, one of his core brand propositions was what he was going to do for the rule of law and international law and the world international order and resume prestige to American foreign policy. It's embarrassing. I mean, and I don't mean embarrassing in the sense that I've got some tomato sauce on my tie type of thing. I mean, this is undermining any type of soft power the U.S. has in the entire world. All right. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Dr. Robert Greene, assistant professor of history at Claflin University in South Carolina and president of the African American Intellectual History Society, about maintaining the true meaning of Juneteenth. First, a couple word from our sponsors. As you know, I was, when we launched this show, people were begging, sell some merch. And for about, 7 years, I was like, no way, it's going to be a nightmare. I'm not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to upload stuff. We're not going to be able to, I can't be bothered. And then, I don't know if it was Julie, I can't remember who it was. We'll just get a Shopify account. And I was like, okay. And it is so easy now for us because of Shopify. For instance, we're going to do later in the program. We're going to show the Vagonia flags that people sent in. We're going to have that up and ready in no time. The issue, the last thing we're going to have to worry about is putting it into our store because it is so easy. Right now, you can go there and we did, 20th anniversary Majority Report merch. None of this stuff would happen if it was a hassle. And Shopify makes it easy. You can go from the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify is there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap, offering outdoor outfits, or flag T-shirts trying to mock a Supreme Court justice's wife, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. They have their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person point of sale system. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds and Rothy's and millions of other entrepreneurs in every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way because businesses that grow with Shopify. I'm telling you, super easy to set up, super easy to maintain. And when we sell stuff at our live show, integrate it back into the website. Easy peasy. Sign up for $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/majority right now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/majority. Also, sponsoring the program today, for a long time, I used those cheap plastic razors. Gave me razor burn, gave me ingrown hairs. It was a problem. And then I'm like, all I'm doing is generating a bunch of plastic. Everybody knows I'm on my get rid of one-time use plastics. I had a subscription service that also, you just dumping out a bunch of stuff and you're paying for stuff. You're hooked. Well, that's why you got to meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover. And now they are bringing their precision engineering to your shaving experience. It turns out the reason why a bad shave happens is not because the blade's not sharp enough. It's easy to make sharp blades. The hard part is to make blades that don't stand out too far from the razor itself, because like diving boards, they get too much give. And when you have that give, that's when you get razor burn. That's when you get all those problems. Henson Shaving, they use computer numerical control machines to make razors where the blade extends just 0.0013 inches, less than the thickness of a human hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. And they have channels here so that you can evacuate the shaving cream, as it were. Now, I will tell you this right now. I don't even shave. I just shave here and here and here and here. I don't even shaving cream. These things are tight. And the Henson shaver works with a standard dual edge blade, gives you that old school shave with the benefits of new school tech. And here's the deal. Once you buy one of these, and they're far more reasonable than you would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got a couple of different models. They really feel nice in your hand. Once you buy one of these Henson razors, it will cost you $3 to $5 per year for the rest of your life. That's it. They use those non-proprietary razors, and it's fantastic. And if you use this link, hensonshaving.com/majority, and use the code majority, you're going to get 2 years worth of blades for free. With your razor, just you take the blades, you put them 100 of them, you put them in the cart, and use the coupon code majority at hensonshaving.com/majority, and you will get those for free. That's 100 free blades when you head to HENSONSHAVING, hensonshaving.com/majority. Use the code majority. Check it out. Honestly, great gift if you messed up on Father's Day. not too late. Every day is Father's Day. Well, not really, not in my house, but
You wish.
I do wish. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dr. Robert Greene, Assistant Professor of History at Claflin University in South Carolina, President of the African American Intellectual History Society, about maintaining the true meaning of Juneteenth. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Dr. Robert Greene, Assistant Professor of History at Claflin University in South Carolina, President of the African American Intellectual History Society. Professor, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm real glad to be here.
So let's, it's interesting because I got a couple of pieces that you've written about Juneteenth. One, keeping it radical and why Juneteenth matters. And I was walking down to work today and I'm like, there's nobody on the streets. I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, it's Brooklyn, but I was like, it's quieter. And then it occurred to me, right. Juneteenth, my son is not going to school today. And Emma came in and told this story that there was like Juneteenth themed
colors for like a class at my gym this morning, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, we're down this road of commercializing this 4 years into its federal recognition.
All right, so like with that premise, and you wrote these pieces a couple of years ago. I mean, I think on some level you saw some of this coming, or at least the danger of it. First, just start, tell us what ostensibly Juneteenth, or what textually Juneteenth is about, but then let's get into the subtext as you talk about it and why we need to maintain those the ideas behind that.
Well, Juneteenth itself is a holiday that originates out of Texas. It celebrates not just the end of slavery, but specifically word reaching the formerly enslaved in Texas, they were actually free. And we should be really careful about how we frame this, because what we're really saying is this was when federal troops reached Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. The enslaved in Texas likely already knew that they were legally free, but it wasn't until federal troops got there to enforce the law to say, okay, you're actually free. And if the slaveholders in Texas don't like it, well, we have some bayonets and muskets to make them actually enforce this law too. And so Juneteenth in a lot of ways is about the end of slavery as we knew it. It's also in many ways the only holiday on the calendar that actually celebrates the end of the Civil War as well. And so I think that's why Juneteenth is such an important holiday for us to hold on to in the here and now.
And the idea of the Union Army showing up in Texas was relevant because while there wasn't much fighting or no fighting in Texas, a lot of slave owners had moved to Texas essentially to get more work out of their slaves in the waning days of the Civil War.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind, too, that the enslavers themselves, as the Civil War is going badly for the Confederacy in the final year or so, are thinking to themselves, how can we keep making profit off of the work of the enslaved as long as we possibly can? And so in a lot of ways, Juneteenth is also a holiday about labor as well, and about not just the end of slavery, but the end of this idea of creating a slaver's empire, which is what the Confederacy was going to be if they had won the Civil War.
Yeah, it's also, I think, and you mentioned this in your piece from The Nation, I guess it was a few years ago, that it's also important to mark Reconstruction and the failures of Reconstruction and not end the recognition at Juneteenth and Texas and what happened in Texas and marking the Emancipation Proclamation finally kind of taking root. It's also important, I think, to recognize the failures of how we didn't build our country back in a way that was more equitable following the Civil War.
Really, being someone who's working in South Carolina now, I can talk about this from two perspectives. That of Texas itself, which Annette Gordon-Reed in her book On Juneteenth has written about how Texas and its Juneteenth legacy is a symbol of Reconstruction not working out the way it could have. But being someone who's currently based in South Carolina, it's also a major story of our state, too. In many ways, the most radical version of Reconstruction was enacted in South Carolina in the 1860s and 1870s with universal education for all for the first time in the state's history, with Black officials on every level in South Carolina. And yet, what Juneteenth reminds us of is not just the end of slavery, but of paths that could have been taken by the country writ large during Reconstruction that ultimately weren't fulfilled. In a lot of ways, we're still trying to catch up to where we could have been in that post-Civil War era.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, you had the Wilmington Massacre, different era, I guess, on some respect than the Tulsa race massacres, but this is all part of the Reconstruction that could have been, and a lot of that past has been completely erased in many respects, or maybe only recently revived. But let me for years, Emancipation Day was celebrated on January 1st. What I'm curious as to how that sort of melted away and Juneteenth became the celebration, and what the implications are of that.
I'm glad you mentioned Emancipation Day, because that holiday has really been, like you pointed out, forgotten about. It was celebrated in many Black communities throughout the South in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And I would argue the chief reason, or the two chief reasons it was gradually phased out, was number one, the further away you got from slavery, the fewer and fewer folks who were actually formally celebrating Emancipation Day. And it doesn't help that Emancipation Day falls on January 1st. And so it gets overshadowed by large celebrations of New Year's Day. Although I will point out that there is a vestige of Emancipation Day still left over, which is whenever someone attends, say, a watch night service on December 31st. The original watch night services in the Black community and Black churches stem from December 31st, 1862, when Black men and women were in churches across the North awaiting formal word from President Abraham Lincoln of the Emancipation Proclamation. So there is still a vestige of it that's still in the Black community even now, but I would argue that getting further away from slavery and also just the overall pageantry of New Year's Day has overshadowed Emancipation Day, which also makes Juneteenth all the more important, because while Emancipation Day has slipped away, Juneteenth was still being commemorated in Texas and in Oklahoma, and now it's being done on a national level.
How much of it was a function of, if it fades out in the 1920s, I wonder how much of it was a function, do you think, of the rise of the KKK at that time? Because that era, from the 1910s and early 20s, is really the era where we get sort of that wave of Confederate statutes, the biggest push on the sort of the myth of the lost cause, and the Dunning School, all of those things that obscured the key elements of the Civil War and of slavery. And I wonder how much the idea of Emancipation Day was just a little bit too on the nose on some level. Like as opposed, Juneteenth. I mean, people I think are more educated about it, but Emancipation Day has it right there. And if there was emancipation, what was before then? I mean, I don't know. I'm fascinated by why one sort of like succeeded, at least in terms of survival, as a holiday, and one didn't.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're onto something with the impact of not just the Ku Klux Klan, but larger white supremacist trends in American culture in the 19 teens and 20s. With that said, I would also add that what you're seeing in the 20s, at least amongst Black Americans, is, for example, the idea of the new Negro, of saying that we are not scared anymore of the Klan, other organizations, other groups, which I think adds to perhaps a lessening of the celebration of Emancipation Day. Again, as you're getting further away from the era of slavery and the era of actual emancipation, you have more younger Black Americans saying, Emancipation Day is important, but we're going to emphasize X, Y, and Z instead. For example, in the 20s, you have the rise of Negro History Week under Carter G. Woodson, later Black History Month. You have other days on the calendar that are designated for the celebration of Black life in America. Even, I would say, the 4th of July has an important role to play here, because in many parts of the country, especially before emancipation in the antebellum period in the 19th century, Black Americans were discouraged from celebrating the 4th of July. One of the great ironies of the post-emancipation period in the South is that in the Deep South especially, the only people celebrating the 4th of July were Black Americans. And so I think you're right that this has the growth of the Klan and just this larger white supremacist backlash to civil rights in the 19 teens and 20s is an important part of the decline of Emancipation Day. But I would also say I think Black Americans are trying to find other ways to celebrate their freedom and independence beyond Emancipation Day too.
Talk about that relationship between Juneteenth and July 4th, because in some ways, I've heard it argued that Reconstruction, and particularly that era, was really the founding of America as we know it today, in the sense that when we look at the vast majority of Supreme Court cases that have been addressed, they turn around the 14th Amendment. And those amendments that came in the wake of the Civil War are the ones that are really foundational in many respects to modern American society. What's the relationship between, that dynamic, I guess, between July 4th and Juneteenth? And it seems like this year I'm not hearing as much as we heard like during the Trump years, for whatever reason, that this was Black people trying to get rid of the July 4th and and replace it, that type of thing. I'm sure that narrative will come back, but in some future year. But what is that relationship?
Well, I think that relationship really works on two levels. Number one, you're absolutely right that many historians think of Reconstruction as, Eric Foner refers to it as America's second revolution. And I think that's absolutely right, that, again, the country undergoes fundamental change during and after the Civil War in ways that create the modern United States as we know it. But for a lot of people, and you see this every year on social media now, there is this sense that the 4th of July celebrates one Independence Day, the independence of the country itself, but Juneteenth celebrates the actual realization of those themes. That 4th of July is, 1776, George Washington, we defeat the British, hooray. But Juneteenth is a holiday saying, but what do those morals and ideals actually mean if they're formally enacted? And so you might see folks who will say, or wear shirts that say Juneteenth means we're free-ish, or that the 4th of July is not quite for me. But again, Black Americans have this incredibly complex relationship with American patriotism, American democracy, that you see summarized by how we view these two holidays. Again, every 4th of July, folks will post the Frederick Douglass "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" speech. But at the end of that speech that he gives in 1852, Douglass says, if the United States is going to be the country that white Americans claim it actually is, then that can only be done through the destruction of slavery. And in a lot of ways, Juneteenth is the end of his 4th of July speech.
Who are figures? I mean, you mentioned some in some of these pieces, but figures that we should be, I guess, be aware of in Black history, or I should say in the history of this country, but Black people who are part of that history, that are integral to the understanding of Juneteenth.
Well, first and foremost, I think you have to start with Opal Lee, who is an activist from Texas, who for many years within Texas pushed for folks to really celebrate Juneteenth, and she was the primary mover and shaker behind making Juneteenth a national holiday. She pushed for it for many years, and it really was the person who pushed for it to become what it is now, which is a federal holiday. I would also say, if you want a proper understanding of Juneteenth as a national celebration and one that expanded beyond Texas, Oklahoma, one name that doesn't pop up very often, but I think is worth noting today, is actually Coretta Scott King. And I say this because one of the earliest examples of Black Americans from the rest of the South being exposed to Juneteenth was actually during the Poor People's Campaign in 1968, when activists assembled in Washington, D.C., shortly after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, where they continued the Poor People's March into Washington, D.C. There are reports in June of 1968 of Juneteenth being celebrated on the National Mall and other Black Americans, including Coretta Scott King, being exposed to it for the first time. I would also add, if you're thinking about the overall themes of Juneteenth and the idea of celebrating emancipation, one name that comes to mind, at least being based now in South Carolina, is Robert Smalls, who was someone who emancipated himself during the Civil War, became a war hero for the federal side during the war, and later became a politician in South Carolina. Robert Smalls' life is a symbol of what Juneteenth was and what it should have been for more Black Americans, of being a firm participant in American democracy. Again, we could go on all day about other figures, but those are just some that I want to highlight this afternoon.
All right. So lastly, well, I guess I have one other question that may be sort of silly, but I'm just struck, like, you know, when we have two types of federal holidays, bless you, in this country, it seems to me. One that are designated on a specific Monday after a certain date, or the third, Thursday, and then others that are really tied to a day, like, July 4th. Juneteenth is going to be, it doesn't matter. It may fall on a Tuesday, it may fall on a Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. It's going to be on the 19th. Are there implications to that, do you think?
Well, I think the chief implication is that by having Juneteenth on June 19th, because after all, the word comes from the shortening of June the 19th, it makes it important for us to understand and recognize what the holiday is about. If Juneteenth were, say, on the third Monday of every June, I think it risks losing some of its core meaning. I think, for example, about Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It celebrates his birthday, but it's always on the third Monday of January. It's not on his actual birthday of January 15th. That makes a difference. I think with Juneteenth, having it stay on June the 19th means that no matter what day it falls on, people have to recognize what the holiday is about, even as it becomes more and more commercialized.
Yeah. And lastly, I was going to ask you that, like, if we as a country are successful in maintaining what Juneteenth is about and what we can learn from it, what will it look like in 5 or 6 years, or what won't it look like? Or that's 10 years. It's just interesting to me because, like, I never heard of it when I was a kid. I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts, but I know that my kid is going to have an awareness of it. And so there's going to be a much broader understanding on some level of what it is than exists today in 20 years or 30 years, just as like, you know, we have kids learning about this in school across the country.
Well, I think I'll start with what we don't want it to become, which is what I think has happened with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, where it becomes MLK Day has become a day where we primarily listen or watch one particular part of his I Have a Dream speech, and that's it. What you're seeing from many activists with MLK Day is they're pushing back by saying, well, let's look at everything else Dr. King said it during his entire adult life and really emphasize his ideas of the beloved community and et cetera. I think with Juneteenth, the hope has to be that it's not just a day off, but it's a day for Americans, regardless of race, creed, or color, to think carefully about, as you said, America's second revolution, to think about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. Because if you start thinking about those, you think about emancipation, then the hope has to be Juneteenth becomes a day where we think about how much of that promise remains to be fulfilled by the federal government and by various state and local governments too. So the hope has to be that Juneteenth becomes a day of both celebration and a day of thoughtful remembrance about emancipation and the sacrifices involved to make emancipation a real and tangible thing for Black Americans.
Yeah, it strikes me it'll be fascinating because there's a low-hanging fruit dynamic when it comes to just choosing "I Have a Dream" speech, but there's also utility to it to those who don't want to recognize that Martin Luther King had an anti-war, an anti-poverty, a broadly very socialistic agenda. It seems like the door is much tougher to do that. There is no low hanging fruit on how you can, find utility in Juneteenth. And it's sort of an open race as to how it will be defined in the future.
And I think a lot of that is going to depend on not only activists across the country, but also folks working in conjunction with local governments, because Juneteenth as a federal holiday, I think offers us a chance to celebrate Black life in different parts of the country. For instance, I think Juneteenth in South Carolina shouldn't look the same as it does in Texas. It should look the same in California or New York. We should be thinking about how to celebrate emancipation, but taking into consideration the context of different parts of the country too, because again, emancipation looks different in different parts of the United States. We've got a lot of work to do in terms of actually accomplishing that. But I think if we start the ball rolling now, we can actually get this done.
Dr. Robert Greene, Assistant Professor of History at Claflin University, South Carolina, President of the African American Intellectual History Society. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll put a link to a couple of those pieces that you've written about Juneteenth at majority.fm and in our podcast and YouTube descriptions. Really appreciate your time today.
And thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jaz Brisack will return to the program. Co-founder of Starbucks Workers United, currently in residence at Berkeley Labor Center, working on the developing the Inside Organizer School on the implications of this latest ruling by the Supreme Court that specifically had to do with the National Labor Relations Board, in this instance, forcing Starbucks to rehire some employees that they had fired as retaliation to their unionization activities. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Pleasure to welcome back to the program Jaz Brisack, co-founder of Starbucks Workers United, currently in residence at the Berkeley Labor Center, working on developing the Inside Organizers School. Jaz, welcome back to the program. The last time we spoke to you was almost 2 years to the day, I think. And it was basically talking about like the birth of the Starbucks union movement. A tremendous amount has happened since then. The latest, of course, was at the Supreme Court, but prior to that, a couple of, I guess it was like 3 or 4, maybe more months ago, 5 months ago, Starbucks finally said, we give up. We will start to negotiate with these unions. And since then, I think hundreds, if not more, Starbucks shops have unionized since that point. With all that said, why don't you take us through that, because it's relevant, or let's start with the Supreme Court case and why, looking back, we can see like there are limitations on how much the law is going to help unionization.
Yes. No, thanks so much for having me back on, and great to be here. In terms of the Supreme Court decision, I think, we have the most conservative Supreme Court in place since the 1860s. And of course, they're going to make decisions like this that side with companies and, eradicate the ability of the labor board to actually enforce labor law, which is weak to begin with. So I think what we saw with the Starbucks campaign was a company trying every single method they could to crush a union, lawful and unlawful, and frequently extremely unlawful. I think they set a record for the most unfair labor practices against a company in modern history. And I think they had a strategy of breaking so many laws so fast that they actually, gummed up the enforcement mechanisms and started having trials, dragging on for years, gumming the system up so much that there was no way to keep up with how many things they were doing. So I think that brings us to, why did they actually give in after years of trying that strategy? And it wasn't because the courts and the law said, oh, hey, don't do that. There's no penalty under labor law, only remedies. So the law is not even capable of giving companies like that a penalty. But the public is. And so I think between their union busting and their reaction to Starbucks Workers United's taking a stance in support of Palestine, there was enough public pressure and enough of a boycott movement around Starbucks that they actually said, oh, wait a second, now we're actually facing a consequence. So maybe we should actually come back to the bargaining table.
Let's try and, if we can, I guess, define on some level the limitations of the law, because it feels to me like the law as it exists now really functions to maybe sort of grease the wheels a little bit for unions, not necessarily bring about or ensure outcomes, but makes it easier in some way. Particularly, the difference between this National Labor Relations Board and the one under Trump, for instance, it seems to me to be day and night. Even with that difference, it's a question of like how much friction is removed from the unionization process.
I think for workers trying to unionize with a company that's doing every single thing possible to prevent them from unionizing, the labor board doesn't have that much impact, because the reality is a company can break the law with near impunity. If they fire workers, close stores, take away benefits, retaliate against workers, the best case scenario is that the law holds them semi-accountable later, makes them post a statement saying, hey, we broke the law, and makes them give, some kind of back pay and reinstatement to the fired workers or reopen a closed store. In the meantime, while that legal process that takes way too long, even in the best of cases, is dragging on, the workers are fired. The other workers who are trying to organize are terrified that the same thing is going to happen to them. And the campaign to organize the union often suffers, what's known as irreparable harm, which is the whole point of why the labor board is supposed to be able to go and get these emergency injunctions. But even those injunctions still take months and months. So the pace of a union campaign moves so quickly that the law can't keep up with a company that's determined to union bust.
Will the ruling that the Supreme Court levied, I mean, it feels like on one level, it's not consequential from the company side, right? Like, okay, there's 4 employees that we get away with not having to, rehire. But from the worker side, it becomes like an intimidation factor that travels much further than the implications of those 4 workers.
No, so I mean, the workers at the heart of the case, what were known as the Memphis 7, when Starbucks fired an entire organizing committee in one store, those workers, have been reinstated already. And I think Starbucks is unlikely to go back and say, you're fired. But what the Supreme Court did was make it significantly harder for the labor board to make the same decision to go for these emergency injunctions in the future. And basically says, you not only have to say that this will be irrevocably damaging to the union effort, but you also have to prove upfront that you're going to win the case later on, which serves as a deterrent to the labor board in actually enforcing the law, which is especially critical in a situation as urgent as firing workers or closing stores during union campaigns, which is a very specifically dire situation.
And so how do you, as a union or workers trying to form a union, how do you respond to that? I mean, and differentiate. I mean, Starbucks is completely, wholly a public-facing company, right? And almost uniquely public-facing in the way that, there's 12 Starbucks on every block type of situation, and I would imagine is very sensitive to the idea, and particularly now, there's also another coffee shop across the street. They're particularly sensitive. How do you, how do you do that in the context of Starbucks? I think is a little bit more clear, but how do you do that in terms of the longshoremen striking, or even Mercedes? How does it work in that instance?
I think the answer is a bit different depending on the company, of course, but I think most of these companies do have weak points or points of leverage where either customers, the public, contractors, different players, who are their board members, what are the sources of potential pressure that could get a company to give in. What we've always said, this is a core part of the Inside Organizer school training, and this was a core belief when we started the Starbucks campaign. Based on that, you need 2 things to win a union. You need a really strong worker organizing committee, and you need a hammer to bring down on a company to force them to respect the right to organize. And that hammer can take a lot of different forms, like you're saying with Starbucks, with REI, with Chipotle, with some of these, very public-facing companies. It's likely that that's a public pressure campaign or a boycott. With other companies, it might take different forms. When we were organizing Nissan, they were susceptible to public pressure, but they also had, for example, a majority stakeholder in the French government, which had its own, set of potential for public pressure or shareholder pressure. But I think while that might be different case to case, the main point is unions can't count on the courts to win campaigns. We have to count on worker power and public power.
Are there laws that could pass? Because I want to talk about the Cemex case and its implications now, because we've now just seen the first application of the Cemex rule, essentially. But and I'll have you explain that to people who have not done a good job listening. If there's anybody in this audience that doesn't know it at this point, I'll be very disappointed. But are there laws that may be long-term visions? Because the CEMEX ends up being sort of almost like card check light. Are there other laws? And I'm thinking specifically, once you get a union, the time between union and contract is often like the next phase of union busting that takes place. Are there laws that people in the union movement look at and go, there's no silver bullet, but that is, there's a bronze bullet that would actually help, or something to that effect?
I mean, I think there's a lot of legal measures that would definitely help organizing. I think the question is, are those going to pass? Because, for example, changing the law to increase penalties or institute penalties on companies that union bust. British Columbia has a law where if workers win a union with a certain percentage of support, the company has a requirement to bargain a contract within a year. So there are all kinds of measures that would be incredibly helpful. You could have a minority bargaining order where if a company fires workers early in the process, which frequently happens, they have to face, the consequence of actually recognizing a union because they did such an extreme action, which doesn't exist under labor law. But I think none of these things are going to pass without a labor movement that's strong enough to actually force government to do it, because we're at 6% density in the private sector. We don't have the strength to force government to do that right now. But I think that workers are more eager to organize than ever. And if we keep organizing, then we can put enough pressure on government to actually come around and pass what we need to succeed.
That seems to me to be one of the biggest changes in the union movement, from looking at like 15,000 feet, I guess, that there is an emphasis that has reversed. Rather than like pursuing legislation and using organizing almost as a tool for electoral outcomes, it's almost like the reverse now. The organizing starts first, and the idea is that hopefully down the road electoral outcomes will happen or legislation will happen. But we got to start with organizing, because that's where the power's got to be applied to. Both in the workplace and it's more broadly in society. So let's talk about this CEMEX, action that the National Labor Relations Board. Will you remind people what the CEMEX ruling was? Yes.
So basically, a CEMEX ruling, if a company commits egregious unfair labor practices after the union has proved a majority, then the labor board orders the union in, which just happened in the case of this casino in Boulder, Colorado, which had taken every form of union busting action, including serving steaks branded with "vote no" on the steaks.
That is just amazing.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? I mean, how did that happen? How did it get reported? I mean, I from what I'm seeing and reading about this CEMEX ruling, was one of the more egregious examples of union busting activity by these companies in recent years. That seems like an extreme example, but just like, could you give us more context around that?
I mean, I think as an organizer, I've seen companies do these kinds of things every day, like fire workers immediately after a campaign goes public, or have massive meetings trying to convince workers to vote no. But I think the difference here is that the labor board is saying, if you do these things, if you bring your whole might to bear against the union in ways that cross these lines, then we're going to force you to actually recognize the union and make a move toward rectifying that. I think, it remains to be seen whether the CEMEX ruling holds up in court if companies start challenging that. But I think, if there are actually penalties for companies, and many companies are going to think that recognizing a union is a penalty, then that could be a deterrent for them exercising some of those or breaking some of those laws.
And the next step from that people are hoping, I think, is that the Jennifer Abruzzo, is that her name, which she's the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, will find that in the next step that if you haven't, this automatic thing is really the best case scenario, right? Because then you don't have to worry about small, little, tiny enforcement mechanisms or fixing, making people whole. By the next step would be to determine if you have not come to a contract with your union after the union has been established within 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, that automatically qualifies as an unfair labor practice. And then we just go into arbitration or mediation at that point. And that really seems to me to be sort of the next big thing that the National Labor Relations Board could do. All right, before we let you go, tell us what the Inside Organizer School is, because this sounds like something that maybe, listeners of our program, we get folks calling in or IMing in or emailing in, like, I want to unionize my shop. How do I go about doing it?
So the Inside Organizer School is a training program to teach workers how to unionize their own workplaces. A collective of us started it back in 2018, and it was the foundation of the Starbucks campaign. It taught us how to go into our stores and unionize, and then turn around and teach our coworkers how to replicate that across the country. So we've worked with unions ranging from the RWDSU to Unite Here, to Workers United, to the UAW, and we're really looking to teach people, wherever they are, if they're not connected with a union yet, how to get a campaign going in their workplaces. So, our belief is that workers should have, the full autonomy to organize in the best ways possible for their workplace and for themselves. And then the role of unions is really to make sure that they can win that right to organize, and that companies that try to walk all over workers' rights will actually pay a consequence.
It's a great resource. It's InsideOrganizerschool.com, I should say. The InsideOrganizerschool.com. We'll put a link to that in the podcast and YouTube description, as well as at majority.fm. And remember it when people ask us, like, where do I get more information? This is great. Congratulations, too, on all the success since we spoke to you two years ago, I guess, on what's happened with Starbucks. I mean, this is a real big victory, I think, for worker organizing. And so congratulations to you, Jaz Brisack, co-founder of the Starbucks Worker United, and currently at the Berkeley Labor Center working on developing that InsideOrganizerschool.com. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a little break, head into the second half of the program. Oh, you know what? While I'm here, too, I wanted to talk about the Progressive Talent Pipeline. Will you go to progressivetalentpipeline.org? It seems like, Inside Organizer School is a great place to go if you're trying to organize your workforce. Progressive Talent Pipeline is set up by Demand Progress. And if you are somebody who has gone to school for, labor or health or whatever it was, and you want to work in government, this is a basically set up to look for progressive thinkers and organizers and writers who are interested in the policies that we talk about generally on this program, climate change, whatever it is. And they help you get placed in the staff of legislators and executive branch in the government. And this is the whole point in many respects. Like, This is the whole point of electing, someone who you may not totally or in many respects agree with as a Democrat. There's a much better chance that people like you, I'm speaking, assuming that most of you are progressive. I know that we have some libertarians who love the show and conservatives,
Rumble
of course.
Viewers, yeah.
And Rumble viewers, of course. But the point being, this is the real point, is that, we want a government that is staffed and lawmakers whose staffs come from a progressive ideology, background, perspective, because you people are the ones who are going to influence them. So if you're interested in that, progressivetalentpipeline.org, that should be another thing that we keep on the front of our heads. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we head to the fun half, we've got to do our, why are we doing it in this?
I don't know.
Yeah, we should. We should do. You're right. We should do it now.
Open it up for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the Progressive Talent Pipeline sounds like Project 2025 Progressive. I'm not really, because there's no agenda that Progressive Talent Pipeline has specifically. Project 2025 is like, these are the plans. These are exactly the documents that you're going forward. This is just getting personnel in there. But now, a lot of people say personnel is policy. So,
and also we should say, there's, I forget where I was hearing this. Maybe it was Dr. Anel Sheline speaking about how there's a possibility that there are some State Department staffers who have been slow walking things in efforts to resist. And that there could be more in the future in terms of funding the genocide. So there's a good opportunity, I think, like if you are interested in working in politics, where it may not be the most front-facing thing, but you can make a difference just by being there and being principled.
Totally. All right. Now, do we have? Can you get the audio for Martha Alito, and so we can show what the inspiration of this? As you know, recently, the reporter Lauren Windsor bought a ticket to go to the Supreme Court
library gala or whatever.
Yeah, some type of gala. She went there under her own name, and she approached Sam Alito and Martha Alito separately, and said, I'm a big fan of yours. And then just got them to, it was basically all you need to do, apparently, to some of the most powerful people in the world, if they're conservatives, say, I'm a big fan of yours. And then every bit of aggrievement that they have suffered over the past 20 years comes out like a gusher.
Oh, yeah.
And here is Martha Alito. Let's listen to that audio again.
It up, and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white and it's yellow and orange flames around it, and in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame. Vergogna, Vergogna, Vergogna. Shame on you. Anyway.
Okay. Well, anyway, and
that was in response to seeing an LGBTQ flag across the lagoon from where her beach house is in southern New Jersey.
All right, and so we now have been asking for submissions. The submissions are now closed, and we're going to go through some of these submissions, and we're going to put it on a T-shirt. And the person who gave us the winning flag will get a free T-shirt.
So we're going to do a poll, right?
Yeah, we're going to do a poll. And so we should let Dorsey know. Maybe when we clip this video, and then we'll put a poll up. People should look for this video on our YouTube page. And here is the first one. Do we know who this is from? Don't give the last name.
Yeah, this is from Andrew.
Andrew. Okay.
Andrew A.
Vergogna. Okay, look at that. Now that flag is pretty good.
Is that some spaghetti in the middle? Yes. An ode to the Italian-American heritage here.
And now,
Hey.
yeah, and in Vergonia, it's an Italian word for shame, as she said. Now, I like this flag. It's got the fire. It's got the flames. However, the tough part with a flag that has white around the borders is that you don't know where the borders are.
That's true. Although that could look good on a white T-shirt where there's no, it's almost more seamless.
That's true, too. People are going to have to vote on this, so let's go with the next one.
All right, so we're zooming out. That's
Who is this by?
This is from Kirsten G.
Kirsten G. Now, this is like what you would, I feel like, I'm not sure. This is a beautiful stuff. I'm not sure if it's a flag, but it certainly would look good on a T-shirt.
Yes, and look, you can see Alito over there looking a little bit, I don't know, agitated or scared in the right-hand corner. I mean, we know that his wife is apparently the one who's the most intense about this.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty cool. I would love to see this on a billboard or on like a wall, like walking down the street in Brooklyn. I would love to see this painted on a wall. This is like a mural.
Or on a flag across the lagoon. We should gift a flag of Vergonia to the whatever. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we can do a T-shirt. I don't know, we're going to get a whole flag.
Okay. Sorry.
Ooh, okay.
This one looks like
Who
a crest.
did this? Yeah,
This is from Tim.
This is from Tim. This looks like Game of Thrones.
It
sort of,
does.
right? Like
the house sigil.
Yeah, I like that. I like that one. It's a little bit more dignified though.
Exactly.
Than Martha Alito is, right?
It's almost too good.
Yeah. Here we go.
But I don't want to taint the jury pool.
Ooh,
This is actually from our very own intern Isaac.
Wow.
Made this one. This design.
And you see the molding.
Yes, that is pretty good. It's just that is actually. I have to say, that feels, aside from the molding person in the background, that feels most like what Martha has in mind. Like this, I feel like if we sent this to her, she would well up and be like, "Oh my God, my vision."
Isaac.
Nice work, Isaac.
All right.
Oh, there we go. What happened to that? That's what happened. I did Don Lemon's show yesterday, and in the middle of it, it just my whole thing went blank, and I had to get back on.
This is from a longtime IMer. Have you read my emails?
Have you read my emails? I like the flame and whatnot. That it helps you pronounce it. Vergogna.
But it almost is Vergogna, right? That's what it looks like a little.
Yeah. If you're on the Italian enunciation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the font is right for a flag. It feels a little bit too cartoony to me, but
I'm so grateful people are submitting. I don't want to say anything negative. I mean, I like that one.
Well, listen,
No, here we go. I like this. I don't love this one in the way that maybe I like the one with the agitated elite Martha Ann.
I want you to know I love every one of these.
Yeah.
It's just that some are more flaggy than others. Go ahead.
Yes, that's true.
This is from Caden M.
I like the idea behind it.
The pixelation's a little,
I don't think we could do that one on the T-shirt, but I like that. I like there's almost like a postmodern quality to this one. Wait, that's a little tight. There you go. Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, this will be up there. I mean, I don't know how we're going to do a poll with all these flags painted. We may have to do. Go ahead. Yeah. Well. Yeah, this keeps doing this. This looks like...
This I really like.
I really like.
Meow. From Slore MP.
Because she said meow, meow, meow a bunch of times in that recording.
That's pretty good.
I love this one.
That feels like more like a T-shirt than a flag, but that could be a great T-shirt.
It kind of looks like those what's that really provocative beer? It's like Angry Bitch or something like that.
Raging Bitch. Yes, yeah, it does kind of look like one of their designs.
Their designs, yeah, it's good. Vergonia.
That is. It's got pictures of all the justices, Bob. I think.
So those are the 6 conservative justices on the bottom there. That's pretty good. I like this one a lot, actually. I like this one a lot.
I don't know how we're going to do it. But, oh, this one looks like hellfire.
And this is from our good friend, the Letter Hack, actually.
Hey, the Letter Hack went with like it almost looks like this is a movie coming out starring Vin Diesel any day now.
Yeah, exactly. From the fire, from the flame came Martha.
Yes.
Hell bent on revenge. Shame!
Oh.
That's a weird thing that's happening to
We're going back. We'll get to that. Just go in order, and then we'll get to that one next. Come back to that one.
This is from Ann in Portland.
Now, what's going on here with the Senza Vergonia?
So Senza must mean something, but I'm going to look it up because I don't know. Senza means something in Italian.
The thing is that I feel like this is also like too stylish. It almost looks like, actually it looks like almost like a...
It means without.
Yeah, without shame is the translation, or shameless.
I mean, this looks like something I would almost see like in a museum, almost.
It looks like a logo for like the Olympics in 2032 or something. Just with the flames. It looks like an Olympic torch. That's a very a torch that is almost too friendly, I feel like. This is pop
Jim
art.
from LA.
Jim from LA, okay.
This looks like almost like a brand of something.
Yes. You get your Vergonia canned meat.
Yep.
Kevin from Maryland.
This is I have to say, this doesn't look so much like a flag because it's got so much writing on it, but it also does feel like the flag that Martha Alito would have.
And I like the definition beneath it. I don't love the usage of papyrus,
but
I do love everything else about it.
Look it up, liberal. I mean, that I think like that you get the aggrievement. It really comes through on that one.
Annie in St. Louis had a few options here.
What's the lazy boy?
There's a lazy. I'm German. Meow, meow, meow. My heritage is German. Lazy boy recliner. Psalm 27. And Vergonia. I think there's the Vergonia with the lazy boy in the middle. Pretty good. All right. Pop off that.
This is the last one. Oh,
Tony Y.
Oh,
Tony Y. This might be my favorite one. This is the most translatable to a T-shirt.
Yeah.
It seems like.
But it doesn't feel as. It looks cool. Maybe I don't know. That could be it.
That's a cool one.
That could be a really good one too. These are all great, and we're gonna put these up, and we'll give you a chance to take a poll and vote on it, and one of these will become. And look, one vote at a time.
Yeah. Do we? I just want to not give short shrift to the person who we accidentally X'd out of. We're getting one. We have one more.
Oh, it actually looks.
From Nikki C.
Meow, meow, meow.
I was gotta say, the thing I really like about this one is it looks like Martha Alito did it herself.
Made it, yeah.
Yeah, like this is my project, and yeah.
She did it in the basement, like manically.
If anything, I almost think the crudeness is potentially like a...
That's what I'm saying.
Like
it looks
benefit.
like she actually did it.
The one before I thought was just so well done, but I mean, again, I don't want to taint the jury pool. So,
all right, folks, we will let you know when that video is up, and you'll have an opportunity to vote on it. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half. You can IM us and other benefits here and there, thither, as it were. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. All this week. You don't need the coupon code. 30% off all of their coffees. So try them out. This is a perfect time to load up on the Majority Report blend. To try, if you've never tried justcoffee.coop, now is the time. They have so many different blends, so many different so many different sources, both from Central America and in Africa, all sorts of different coffees and roasts. check it out. Now is the time to try it with the 30% off. Then you can try a couple of different blends and whatnot. See which one you like. JustCoffee.coop. Wait, Dragon Rider says we didn't do theirs. Did we? I don't know if we saw that.
Well, maybe a late submission. I'll just
Alec, we're Begonia in the title. I didn't. How did we miss that one?
Bradley, I will, as you look that up, I'm going to just say what happened on ESPN yesterday. If you guys want to check it out, youtube.com/ESPN show. We talked about the results of the Celtics winning the NBA Finals. I gave a wildly incorrect prediction about how last night's Game 5 would go in the NHL playoffs in the Stanley Cup Final. And we also talked a bit about Rory McIlroy and what happened at the U.S. Open, as well as Fox News saying Caitlin Clark is the Jackie Robinson of the WNBA. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
I don't see anything from Alec, although I do see a bunch of other things that we didn't get to, I think, down there.
Maybe it was because we cut off the submission. I don't know. But
no, we did. I don't see anything from Alec. We will endeavor to find that. Yeah, we did miss a bunch, dude. Did you Google? Did you search Vergonia? Like, did you see this one from Jonathan? There's a lot of stuff that has not been opened here. All right. Well, maybe we'll do a round 2. What's happening on Left Reckoning? Do you know?
I know that Matt and David spoke with Nathan Robinson yesterday about Noam Chomsky's legacy, despite obviously reports of his demise being greatly exaggerated for now. Obviously, I know he's in a tough situation, so I understand it. But they discuss his legacy, kind of his intellectual history and things like that. So if you want to check that out, youtube.com/leftreckoning, and you can access the postgame at patreon.com/leftreckoning.
Quick break, fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, and I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now, and I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now, but I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is this?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Who libertarians? They're so stupid though. Common sense says, of course.
gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Back.
We are back. Oh, hold on.
We are back. Oh. Oh.
There we go.
You have enough headroom?
Yeah, actually, just widen out just a little bit.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, go a little more. A little more.
Wow, we're really...
A little more.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm aligning us.
Good job. All right.
Thank you.
We are back.
Thank you.
It is
Is the fun half.
the fun half, ladies and gentlemen, wherein we have fun.
Yes.
Let's start with this clip. We just mentioned, Lauren Windsor's recording of Martha Alito.
American hero, Lauren Windsor.
And apparently she's been busy. At one point, she was at Mar-a-Lago. Was it her that was there? I guess so.
It's her and her colleague, but was also at the Alito event as well.
I like their job. They have a good job. You could go around.
Are they hiring for
Yeah,
Sam?
pretty good. And here is Lauren Windsor. Do we know when this was from?
It says it right here. It's a March 19th of this year. It's what's called a Catholics for Catholics event at Mar-a-Lago.
So she's got to do that, right? She's got to probably make it there be a little lag so she can stack these on top of one another and then release them all at once. But Roger Stone, he is known as one of the dirtiest people in American politics. He was instrumental in orchestrating and helping orchestrate like the Brooks Brothers riot, which was a show of often I think a lot of them were Republican congressional staffers to disrupt the counting process in Florida on behalf of George W. Bush. So he has a long history of anti-democratic activism, and this is just, I think, an extension of that.
Do you mind taking a photo with me, Mr. Stone?
Sure.
You're in a position to know more than anybody else. How are you feeling about the election?
Too early to say.
I can't win again.
No, but it can be stolen again.
We're in a whole... Wait, there's got to be something we can do to prevent that.
We're working on this, but I'm not saying that I'm totally confident yet, because I'm not. By the way, in 2020, only 65% of evangelical Christians bothered to vote. So when you tell people, oh, we're doing great, then this happens. I don't have to worry about voting. So that's our biggest... Overconfidence is one of our giant problems right now among our own people.
But so, what are we going to do to stop it, though? Thank you.
I'll tell you the same thing I told her. We're working on it.
Well,
lawyers, judges, technology.
Governors?
Some, but there aren't many with any guns.
We got to use every lever we can.
We are doing that. All right.
You're doing the Lord's work.
Thank you.
So they're gearing up. Interesting to hear his perspective on this. He's also very, I think, much more sensitive about telling his secrets. But it's interesting that he's having some problems with governors.
They're being a little squishy about it. I also like that only 65% of evangelicals bothered to vote from him there. The election was the highest turnout election in terms of numbers in the history of this country. It's part of why Biden won in 2020. But if they're worried about evangelicals, that maybe says something a little bit about, I don't know, without Pence, are they going to go with a God Squad VP?
That is a big issue, because if only 65% voted last time around, it's not inconceivable there'd be less because of Pence's absence. Is there more to this?
Yeah, there's more. It says earlier that night. Also, they may be a little bit unmotivated because they got their crown jewel in abortion rights being overturned.
Yep.
So I guess this was earlier.
Thank you very much. Wow. Oh,
Wait, that's not it. It's a different one.
I genuinely think you're pleasure to meet you. Such an important election here.
I'm saying, what are we going to do this election? Because the Democrats stole it last time.
yes, but between now and then, we're going to work very hard and very smart to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And so far, given the incredible power they have and they will use ruthlessly, we're beating them as of today. So in the end, I would be the president's trial in Georgia's falling apart. I think the judge is on the verge of dismissing the charges against him in Florida. They're delayed in New York City, and they're now delayed in Washington.
Can you pause and just go back to what he's saying there, 5 seconds, so we can have the caption up? So this is in March, so I guess 3 months ago to the date in 2024. The president's trial in Georgia is falling apart. That's them talking about Fani Willis now potentially being taken off the case because she had a relationship with one of the special prosecutors. And then the judge, I think, is on the verge of dismissing the charges against him in Florida. That's Eileen Cannon. So that's the pro-Trump judge. They're delayed in New York City. That hasn't held because Trump got convicted of 34 felonies in New York City. And then they're delayed in Washington, which is because of the Supreme Court. Right. And we're going to hear that in a few days or a week or two about what they decide on the presidential immunity case. But that was what was so key about the Supreme Court deciding to do what they did. They took up a case that is just absolutely ridiculous, which is this notion that the president, if he's acting in an official act of trying to, do a coup, does that count as an official act of the presidency, which should make him immune from prosecution? They seemingly, they're not going to probably rule, I think, that he can do that. That would be so egregious. But they did already what he needed to do, which was delay it. So it's probably not going to happen before the election. I just think it's interesting to hear Stone speak so positively about those efforts.
New York City, and they're now delayed in Washington. So it's not clear that they can have a trial before the election, which is the absolute key to being able to convince people that the reason they lost was because of the trial. Right now, if they steal it, people say, well, that's not possible. Trump is leading in all the polls. They want to try him, suck up his money, suck up his time, and create a reason why their theft is plausible, believable. You see?
Yeah, what stops them from just voter fraud?
They may, in some states it'll be easier to stop them, in other places it won't. But at least this time, when we do it, you have a lawyer and a judge whose own phone number standing by so you can stop him. We made no preparations last time. None.
Well, I was at the Capitol, so I'm prepared to go back.
Well, that may not be necessary. There are technical and legal steps that we have to take to try to have a more honest election. I'm not there yet, but there are things that can be done. It's a long conversation. I'm working with changes in state law, real-time voter list monitoring, going to court as we just did to challenge some of the voter lists. The election's not tomorrow. We're running to court to sue in Michigan.
All right, and he's talking about all of their the so-called lawfare that they're engaging in and getting geared up, and the idea that they have the home phone numbers of certain judges in certain states. I imagine that they have focused on key counties. I mean, look, we're talking how many votes over the hundreds of thousands of votes over 4 states really are they going to be the ones that they're going to be all fighting over. What's also interesting to me is his clear hesitation when it comes to like another January 6th. And I would imagine it's because there's a difference when you don't control the levers of power when you pull something like that than you do. Because clearly something broke down or was not put in place or was being halted in terms of a response from the National Guard and security measures around the Capitol. That won't happen again, particularly if, it won't happen again regardless, but because I think, obviously people are going to be more alert to this. And the Biden administration, even if they lose, are not going to be, inviting people to come and do that. So interesting to get that perspective.
Yeah. And I also think it underscores the fact that the Jack Smith election case is the one they should be the most concerned about. And that's the one that they're trying to delay. But the federal government not coming at him for things like hiding documents, which he clearly did, but coming after him for trying to overturn the election, that's a level of seriousness that I think they should be afraid of, and they probably are.
Gorsha Morka, the arrogance that these justices have give me vergonia. They're straight up clout chasing for randos' approval. Dirty Jersey, my gym over here in Jersey has 3 different morning news shows on. Each one has at least one attack ad against Bowman per commercial break. Sometimes 2. It's impossible to look at the TV without seeing one playing. I've never seen anything like this. It is extraordinary.
It's insane.
It's extraordinary. I'm not in district, and I've seen tons of ads too.
On the Celtics game.
Yeah.
All
on
the national broadcast.
Yep. In their debate last night on Pix 11, there were 3 UDP or Latimer funded ads compared to 1 for Bowman.
The fact is he's being outspent almost 20-1. Almost 20-1. Mr. Papp says, well, you're checking flag submission emails. Look for flags in the subject line. That also should be.
Smart.
Mr. Melancholy, Roger Stone is the quintessential rat effer. Should not be allowed near politics. Indeed.
Yep.
Iowa Ryan, should we be worried about what's going on with Sean Fain? This union push is so fragile. There is an investigation, a federal investigation. I think it was reported a while back, maybe about, beginning of this month. Neil Borofsky, who's one of the person, and he was part of, I can't remember what financial agency while back in the government, but the UAW, I think, is monitored by a federal overseer of the union, and the UAW is now under investigation that involves financial oversight responsibilities. Apparently, the union secretary-treasurer was fired by a Fain. And there was an issue with the UAW vice president. It's unclear exactly what the allegations are, but that Borofsky wrote that Mock, who was fired, filed allegations of her own against Fain, and that his actions were against her were in retaliation for her refusal or reluctance to authorize certain expenditures of funds at the request of and for the benefit of those in the president's office. So we'll see. Fain issued a statement taking our union in a new direction means sometimes you have to rock the boat, and that upsets some people who want to keep the status quo. But our membership expects better and deserves better than the old business as usual. We encourage the monitor to investigate whatever claims are brought to their office because we know what they'll find. A UAW leadership committed to serving the membership and running a democratic union. We're staying focused on winning record contracts, growing our union, fighting for economic and social justice on the job. This is all out of a consent decree in 2021 for a federal monitor because there were federal corruption charges from past union officials from the UAW. That's right. Borofsky was the Inspector General of TARP, which was the bailout funds for banks, and he had some real issues with that stuff. So we'll see. I suspect that, I don't know. I mean, there's no way to know from the outside, but I suspect, let me put it this way. Fain was a reform candidate.
Yep.
He came from a reform movement within the union. I would be surprised if there were not people who were still at the leadership positions of the union who were operating in a way that was contrary to the way that Fain wanted them to operate. And, more often than not, there's friction in those situations. We'll see, though. We'll see. So Donald Trump had a little bit of there's a little bit of a controversy.
No. Him?
Yeah, if you can believe it. As you know, the Republican National Convention is happening in Milwaukee in next month, actually. And Donald Trump was in Racine, Wisconsin, and was hyping Milwaukee. And the reason why he has to hype Milwaukee is because it was reported, and then he confirmed it basically, that Trump was crapping all over Milwaukee as a city. And some people took offense to that from Wisconsin, right? You don't want that out there. And then they, the Fox News tried to nip it in the bud, I think is what the reporter from Jesse Waters, said, let's put this to bed, or we'll nip this in the bud. I think actually it was put this to bed on Hannity, nip this on the bud on Waters. And he said, well, a lot of crime, but great city, but a lot of crime. So much crime that Donald Trump, I'm not even sure, wanted to be there for the RNC. But here he is in Racine making the case that I picked Milwaukee. I love it.
Thank you very much. Wow. Oh, and I love Milwaukee. I was the one that picked Milwaukee, I have to tell you. I was the one that picked it. These lying people that they say, oh, he doesn't like Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. I said, you got to fix the crime. We all know that. You got to make sure the election's honest. But I'm the one that picked Milwaukee, and the Democrats, or the radical left lunatics, as I call them, what they say is just so terrible. They lie. They have a horrible candidate. They have a candidate that has no clue, doesn't know where he is, and all they can do is lie.
Let's cut to CNN's Abby Phillips speaking with Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson and ask him to clarify those remarks that Donald Trump, who never lies, picked Milwaukee.
Mayor, thanks for being here. So the former president, he's now saying publicly he loves your city, but he did, according to those sources, call it horrible in private. What's your reaction to the backtrack here from the podium tonight?
It is really, really interesting, Abby, to hear former President Trump say now that he all of a sudden loves Milwaukee and that he even selected Milwaukee. Look, Abby, as you mentioned, I'm a Democrat and the mayor of the largest city in the state, and we're proud to host the Republican National Convention. We worked really, really hard to get the convention. The folks at the RNC have been great. Right before I was initially elected mayor, I took time off the campaign trail to go to Washington, D.C., to go to the RNC headquarters, to do the final pitch to bring the RNC here. And it was the RNC that selected Milwaukee. I think I would remember if Donald Trump had anything to do with that. He was nowhere to be found. That is a complete fabrication. I am stunned by that.
Mayor.
Oh, well, lie. They all lie. He lies. Joe Biden lying, Joe lies.
Little cavalier with the truth, cavalier.
And that also was dovetailed with the report that Donald Trump is not going to stay in Milwaukee for the convention. He's going to fly in, fly out, and stay at one of his properties in Chicago.
Yes, but that was what originally was the plan.
Oh.
But then they asked him.
Yeah.
And when the story started getting around, now he, according to the New York Times, Trump wasn't going to stay in Milwaukee. And then reporters asked. That's right. He is, in fact, going to be in Milwaukee. When Republicans gather in Milwaukee next month to nominate him for president, Donald J. Trump planned to stay not in the convention's host city, but at a Trump hotel in Chicago, some 90 miles away.
I'm fighting crime, okay?
That changed mid-afternoon on Tuesday after reporters for the Times and an ABC station in Chicago contacted his campaign for comment. And Mr. Trump now intends to stay in Milwaukee.
You know, I mean, I don't understand. Well, I do understand.
What's the beef here?
Well, I mean, it's the beer capital of the world, and I'm a teetotaler.
Yeah.
Just stay in the presidential suite at the 5-star hotel in Milwaukee. Just do it one time. One time.
He doesn't low rent city, horrible crime.
Well,
Lada doesn't want to see it.
Like, I mean, when I went to go see the Super Bowl, I had to stay in a pretty rough motel. It was a smoking room, and I had to share it with my dad, who snores. And that was worth it because it was a big event. So Donald Trump, the Giants won that Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember it, Sam.
No, I don't.
Blotted that in Indianapolis, yeah. And so this is worth it, buddy. This is worth it. This is worth it. You can stay in just a 5-star hotel and not your own property for once.
Speaking of Donald Trump, people are making a big deal out of this. I think they're making a big deal out of the wrong thing, to be honest with you. This is the guy who wrote a book about Donald Trump. How Donald Trump and Mike Burnett took America through the looking glass. Raman Situda was on with CNN's Caitlin Collins about a series of interviews he conducted with Trump for his book, Apprentice in Wonderland. This is, talking about Mark Barnett, who was the executive producer of The Apprentice. And he's relating Trump's cognitive abilities during these interviews. I have a slightly different take on this, but here's Raman Situda.
Can we just first start off about your sit downs with Trump? 6 times after he left the White House, which, is such a different period, thinking about what's happening in Virginia tonight and seeing his grip on the Republican Party. I mean, what was he like? What did you observe from him when you sat down with him?
So I interviewed Donald Trump more than any other journalist since he's left the White House. We started in May 2021, and that report you just talked about meandering and confusing is right. He goes from one story to the next. He struggles with the chronology of events. He seems very upset that he wasn't respected by certain celebrities in the White House, and then he'd go to a story about The Apprentice. So as you know, Caitlin, it's very challenging to interview Donald Trump and to go toe-to-toe with him, but there was some cognitive questions about where he was and what he was thinking, and he would from time to time become confused.
Because you wrote at one point about Joan Rivers, him telling you that she voted for him in 2016, I believe, even though...
confidently told me and declared that Joan Rivers voted for him when he ran for president, and Joan Rivers died in 2014. Joan Rivers died in 2014, so she would not have been able to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, and because you talked about his memory, you wrote that, on some days I have the feeling he has no idea.
But on her deathbed, she told her daughter, vote for Trump for me. Here's the part that, like, I mean, look, I in a million years, I wouldn't have known when Joan Rivers died. It's conceivable that Joan Rivers came up to him in 2013 and said, you know, if you ran for president, I would vote for you.
She was also a contestant on The Apprentice, too, so this is all about The Apprentice.
Right.
Yeah.
But the really weird thing is that you're doing an interview with a reporter after 4 years of being president, and you're trying to brag about Joan Rivers voting for you? Like, what the F is wrong with you? Yeah, I know you think that I lost, but Joan Rivers said she voted for me. So I think I've got Hollywood pretty wrapped up. Like, what? Like, in what context are you bragging to a reporter? Okay, let's say she died in 2017, not 2014, about somebody who hasn't been on the scene for at least 4 or 5 years, who was not exactly like, I mean, I get it, but it's not like, you know.
Well, she broke the glass ceiling with the late night talk show, so who's the real feminist, Hillary?
I mean, I think she's a bit, but like, what world are you bragging about Joan Rivers voting for you when you're president? Like, how, like, this is the one thing about conservative baby brains. Like, and I'm convinced, like, you can pick a conservative out without even knowing anything about their politics by, like, their level of aggrievement. At the end of the day, their aggrievement is going to carry all. And that is...
I mean, his brain in particular is bizarre, though. It's all... He's stuck in the glory days of The Apprentice, and everything else is just flowing from that, whether it be TV ratings, whether it be crowd size. He cares about the marketing of the presidency and nothing else, and the eyeballs on it. It's really an interesting... I wish his brain would be studied, but we know he won't.
We have
let
the
that
biggest
happen.
crowds. Is there any more to this?
Yeah, and because you talked about his memory, you wrote that, on some days I have the feeling he has no idea who he's even talking to, that he actually forgot or didn't remember that the two of you had spoken at your first sit-down interview.
Right. So my first sit-down was in May. He wasn't doing a lot of interviews. And then we sat down again towards the end of the summer. And when I sat down, there was a very blank expression on his face. So I asked, do you remember when we spoke recently? And he said, no, I have no memory of that. And he couldn't recall. He said it was a long time ago. And then we had to start from scratch. So the interview started from square one, where he started telling me the same exact stories that I heard in our first
Well, they're
interview.
good stories.
So from there, then we did more interviews so that we could cover more ground. But it was a little bit like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, and the Trump...
part of me is his brain is clearly mushy and messed up in many ways, and there's a lot of synapses firing in the wrong direction or whatever. But I also just think he's a narcissist that definitely doesn't remember most people that have conversations with him. Like
Tiffany,
yeah.
that sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Who is that? Wait. Oh, right, you're my daughter. I forgot about you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like also I don't mean this is me obviously speculating, but this writer Ramin Setudeh, like he's a Persian guy.
Yeah.
Trump remembering a reporter who also was like presumably a ambiguous minority man. Like he's probably like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Why'd you bring this guy in here?
Right.
Like it could be a cognitive thing, but it also could just very much be like he's gonna forget about you the second you leave his.
Human beings coming and talking to him
sightline.
need to be just vessels for him to tell stories, and that's really it. They're all just faces.
He barely
swabs.
possesses object permanence.
Yeah,
like it's.
Let's do this clip of the primary debate. They've had like 4 debates now. Representative Jamal Bowman and I think scandalous Westchester County Executive George Latimer is. The guy hired his girlfriend. Again, I don't care. About affairs. It sounds like the wife must have signed off because it seems like everybody in Westchester County knew that that he was dating someone who was not his wife. But to get her a job, that seems to hire her for the county at $150,000 a year. I don't know. That seems a little dubious. And then the other thing that really annoys me about this race, aside from all of it, frankly, the near $20 million that have come in from AIPAC and AIPAC affiliated super PACs. against Bowman in this primary race. But this is a guy, Latimer, who's already said he doesn't want to raise taxes on the rich, which is a huge center point of Biden's, second term agenda. And I don't understand how you have Hillary. Well, I guess I do understand. Like she and Biden not friendly. And so maybe in some ways this is a rebuke to Biden by Clinton.
But it's pretty remarkable, too, for Latimer to make that statement about I'm not going to raise taxes, while then also turning around to say Bowman is the one not abiding by Biden's agenda.
But this has been the whole thing. The Manchin and Sinema and then the Gottheimer in the House were the ones that derailed Biden's Build Back Better agenda. It was literally they were sending out progressives like AOC to go and Jayapal to go on cable to try to sell it. Yeah. And so that's what's just so freaking frustrating about this is Biden's agenda was to the left of what all these centrist candidates wanted. And Hillary just has, she loves AIPAC. I mean, I don't know what it is because she also endorsed Eliot Engel, and that at the time he was an incumbent and Bowman beat him. But she has an axe to grind against the Bernie Sanders left, against the progressive left, and she also is a staunch supporter of Israel. I think that's mostly it.
Here is Jamal Bowman in debate with the Joe Manchin on the Hudson.
Manchin on Hudson.
George Latimer.
Yeah, it's like Croton on Hudson. Yeah.
Right now about Israel's war with Hamas, gentlemen. It began with the Hamas terror attack, as you know, in Israel back on October 7th, claiming the lives of 1,200 Israelis and others. Concerns have now been raised about the number of civilians killed in the ensuing fighting in Gaza. Mr. Latimer, the closest that we've gotten to your stance on this is a clip from last December. Take a look right here.
That's why I say you use the word genocide. Be very careful what you're saying, because what genocide was gas chambers and people who were herded into a building for the purpose of being killed.
Mr. Latimer, in the months since you made that comment, there have been thousands of additional civilian casualties reported in Gaza. So we ask you now, is what's happening on the ground in Gaza a genocide? You have 60 seconds.
No, it is not a genocide. Let me tell you what it is. It is the unwillingness of Hamas to sit down at the table. President Biden and Secretary Blinken offered a program this very week that had the support of the United Nations, also had the support of Israel's willingness to go along with it. Hamas has to release hostages. All of this began because of the horrific action on October 7th. The way that people went in and raped women and murdered people.
Pause it for a second. This is demonstrably untrue. Now, I mean, even Thomas Friedman today, the day after he says this, Thomas Friedman has said the problem is Israel is not willing to end this war. Hamas is willing to give the hostages, return the hostages to end the war. Israel has taken a position that is completely non-negotiable. You cannot say we're going to negotiate with the party sitting across from us, and the first term that must be agreed to is that party goes away
or dies.
Well, that's whatever I mean, you want to call it. Dies, eliminated, whatever. That party does not exist, and that's not a negotiation. There's no partner for peace there. There's nothing.
And Latimer is also lying about what genocide actually entails. Let's be clear that the Holocaust was one of the worst crimes against humanity and one of the worst genocides in the history of humanity. But does it needs to include gas chambers? That's the case. Then that means that the Bangladesh genocide is not a genocide, that the Cambodian genocide is not a genocide, that, the Rwandan genocide, the Bosnian genocide, Darfur, all of these things that have been legally defined as genocide under international law wouldn't count. Because apparently genocide is only the one that we have in our cultural memory where the United States gets to look like the moral high ground in that instance because we were on the good side in fighting the Nazis and because that happened within the West and that it happened within Europe where we identify Europe as a part of the collective us. No, we've done many genocides to people in the global South that didn't involve gas chambers.
Horrific action on October 7th. The way that people went in and raped women and murdered people, which he denied until it was impossible for him to continue to deny it. If you can get Hamas to release those prisoners. You can get a cessation of the military action and humanitarian aid. And that is the intelligent way to go forward in peace. When you call 3 days after the attack for ceasefire, what you're really saying is we want Hamas to keep the hostages, and now we want to start negotiating. That's not a responsible position that he's taken.
Mr. Latimer, thank you. Mr. Bowman, in November, you were outside the White House when you said this about the war. Take a listen.
We should conduct ourselves as a diplomatic democracy, not as a nation that supports and condones just this slaughter of tens of thousands of civilians and almost 10,000 children. We are allowing babies to be killed because of our policies.
So, Mr. Bowman, are you saying that the White House is condoning genocide? You have 60 seconds here.
I'm saying the United States Congress should not be sending weapons to Israel at this time because according to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, there is a plausible genocide happening in Gaza right now. We need a permanent ceasefire, which includes a release of the hostages, as I have stated multiple times, humanitarian aid getting into Gaza right now because a famine is setting in. We have almost 40,000 dead. We have 16,000 children dead, and we have hundreds of thousands injured. He won't even acknowledge the existence of the Palestinian people, and he will not say Palestine because he wants to erase them from the consciousness of the American people. Say Palestine. Acknowledge Palestinian people. Let me see you do that.
Mr. Rebuttal? Mr. I'm going to come to you in 1 second, but Mr. Bowman, I want to stay with you for 1 second here because I heard you say Congress, but is the White House condoning genocide was the question. 15 seconds.
Is the White House condoning genocide?
Are you saying the White
I
House
would
is
like for
condoning genocide?
President Biden to do more to make sure we are not sending weapons to Israel at this time, and especially Benjamin Netanyahu, who has evoked language that is genocidal, just like President Herzog has evoked language that is genocidal, and that's why international charges are being brought against Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, Mr. Bowman, thank you. Mr. Latimer, coming to you for 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, I
here.
think it's important to understand that the biggest reason why you have the casualties, Hamas created a terrorist attack, no different than what happened on 9/11 here in New York, where 3,000 New Yorkers died. And in that response to that, Israel did not move into Gaza immediately. And during that period of time, what Hamas did cynically was to put their citizens in between the military force and hide the hostages and put those civilians out there to be killed. I can say the word Palestine. Can you say the word truth? Mr. Bowman constantly bends the truth to his satisfaction. He did not call for the hostages to be released in the beginning. He denied that there were atrocities on October 7th. He's proven time and time again that he's hostile to the state of Israel.
We're going to
have a rebuttal.
Mr. Bowman, I'm going to give you a 30-second rebuttal here, and then we're going to move on with Henry on this topic too, but you get 30 seconds.
We're staying with the topic. We immediately condemned the October 7th attacks. We condemned the celebration of it that took place in Manhattan. We condemned Hamas immediately. I've met with families of hostages and vowed to help them fight to get them back. And I've called for at least the release of hostages at least 10 times. So when we talk about truth, I'm actually in Congress doing the work of the people of the district, and I understand how Congress works.
Not in
and I
Congress
understand
now. You've been missing votes left and right.
Understood, Mr. Latimer.
Well, he interrupted me, so I thought it was fair game.
Again,
He's missing votes because I mean, I don't know what that means, but he did say truth there, so he was able to say it. I guess he did say Palestine, but not really within the context of anything.
He said it like he was saying a word from the dictionary.
Palestine. The hostages returning home is not connected to continuing the war effort. In fact, the hostages are risked on a daily basis over and over again
Without a doubt.
the continue. I mean, over 100 hostages. The
Thomas
bulk of them
Friedman agrees with you.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
well,
honestly,
don't say that. I might
well,
throw up
but
in my
it's,
mouth.
It's true. I mean, this is like the level of delusion and lying and fabricating and just sort of the willfulness of it. I mean, Thomas Friedman is saying that Latimer is lying here. And so it is so, this is like,
yeah,
this is about as normie down the middle stuff as you can get when Thomas Friedman is the one who's basically saying that that's not the case.
And when you poll Democrats, the overwhelming number of Democrats throughout the country are supportive of Jamal's position in terms of a ceasefire and cessation of hostilities in exchange for hostages. Bowman did a great job of reframing the question in a way that was favorable to him in terms of the context of an election, right? Like, so he didn't take a lot of the bait there, and he made, I think, Latimer look silly. It's just does it win over the money? I don't know.
I mean, listen, there is, as we've heard from people, the number of ads, you cannot turn on the television. I imagine the number of mailers that are coming in from Latimer on a daily basis. So we will see. There are opportunities for you to help. We have links to the WFP's phone banking. We have links to canvassing that you can do this weekend in district. You don't have to be in district to do the phone banking. You can come in district to do the canvassing. Links will be in the podcast and YouTube description.
And we have all of the volunteering opportunities at the Mobilize page for Bowman, Congressman Bowman as well. That's the first link where you can get every possible opportunity. But we also have the Action Network event, the Working Families phone banking, and the Jews for Jamal phone banking links as well.
And look, the last poll that was taken was, I think, had Latimer up by like 15 points or something to that effect. But there was 21% undecided. And I will also say, like, this is one of those elections that is going to be different than the general election. We have seen time and time again, special elections very difficult to poll. This is a primary in the middle of June with probably almost nothing else on the ballot. I can tell you that, like in the 19th, they didn't even have a primary on the congressional race. It was one state senator that you could vote for. And so this is going to be a question of motivated voters, probably high info voters. And, you can look at and I don't want to stretch this too far, but in Virginia, you had Bob Good, who was the chair of the Freedom Caucus. It looks like he's going to lose his race, but only by a couple hundred votes.
400 votes as of our last count. Yeah.
Which is shocking because not only did the sort of like the establishment of the Republican Party actively work against him, but Trump came out and endorsed his challenger because Good endorsed
DeSantis early on.
And of course, McCarthy was pissed because Good unseated McCarthy.
And he spent money on behalf of him as a part of his revenge tour.
Exactly.
Loser.
But the point being is that in these races, it is the real, like the hardcore base that's motivated that comes out and votes. And you can have all the ads in the world, and there could be tens of thousands of more people who, if they went to the polls, would vote for Latimer just based upon the polls. But that doesn't necessarily make them go out. You can help Bowman voters go out by phone banking and by canvassing. And so it's, I think this race is going to be, I would be shocked if there's a 15% differential between these two. I have a feeling that could be a very big surprise in terms of Bowman. And understand, this is if AIPAC and its money loses here, it is going to have a lot of impact going down the road. Now, a billionaire doesn't really care that much about wasting $500,000 here, $500,000 there. If it can support, the slaughter of a lot of brown people, it may be worth the investment as far as they're concerned. But over time, if a political entity, PAC, whatnot, fails in bringing back victories, their funding slowly dries up. So a very, very, very important race, not just because Bowman is a great progressive congressman and part of the squad, and we're in a defense mode here in terms of like protecting these people, but also because it sends a message and undercuts the entire project that AIPAC has in terms of, scaring lawmakers into voting for continuing to support genocide.
And to your point on that, sometimes polling in these smaller districts can have a lot of variance. I was trying to find the actual poll numbers, but I was going to guess 20, but it was bigger. AOC was in her race against Crowley in the lead up to the primary in 2018. Polling had her down 36 percentage points. She ended up winning by 15 points. So the point is just like, don't be cowed by those poll numbers. It just basically means that earlier on he had an advantage because of all the media that he was buying. But there's a real opportunity here to stand up for what's right and support Jamal Bowman and send a message about Republican money in the primary, not just pro-genocide money, but Republican money in a Democratic primary.
Let's talk about I was on Don Lemon's show yesterday. You can check it out on YouTube. It was actually pretty fun. He's a fan of the show. We covered this story by Kathleen Parker about her strategy for Biden is to replace Kamala Harris with a different VP so that people won't be afraid of voting for an older Joe Biden. And can you guess who she thinks that Kamala Harris should be replaced with?
Hillary Clinton.
Did you know this already?
No.
You guessed it because it's the most absolutely bat crap idea ever.
Of course. They've been trying. I mean, I haven't heard of this, but they've been saying Hillary's going to replace him at the convention. So that's what I assumed.
I mean, first of all,
yeah.
I don't know how much younger or older she is than
She's Trump's age. She's 78 years old. 77 years old.
It's like, can you imagine the whole theory is we need to assure the American public that there's a younger person to step in. And so we're going to find someone 3 years younger than Biden.
Still born in the 1940s.
Also, somebody who, not only that, lost to Donald Trump. Like, there's only one person who has lost an election to Donald Trump. Let's get that person to shore up the ticket.
Because that's really what they wish. They are you kidding me? This is just fan fiction. This is fan fiction.
Total fan fiction. And here is more of the fan fiction. This is Fox's Brian Kilmeade. And, the value of the right to do this. And look, I think Joe Biden made a big mistake in not running again. People voted for him as a caretaker president. Prior to Gaza, there was a lot of stuff that I think that Biden did that was really good. And even some stuff that he's done since then. We'll talk a little bit about the new immigration rules in a moment. But, I harp on this a lot, that liquid natural gas, pausing the permit for the export facility there, huge thing in terms of climate change and in terms of like rejecting fossil fuel. But once you realize that Joe Biden is incapable of saying, I'm not the best candidate in this instance, there's no reason to think that there's some other small data point that's going to make him go like, well, at this later date, the best thing for me to do is drop out. It's just absurd. But the idea is to create this narrative that he's incapable of running. Here is Brian Kilmeade with Maryland's Wes Moore.
Told me, they said when this bridge collapsed, he goes, this is going to be a test for Governor Moore because people think he's going to be presidential material. And if he can get this done quickly, this would be a great launching pad for him. So far, you're doing it. And that's why people are floating your name as a possible President Biden replacement should the wheels come off come the August convention. Your reaction?
I'm full-throated in my support of President Biden because I know so much of the momentum that we've been able to see in the state of Maryland. You know, when I was first inaugurated, we were 43rd in unemployment. Now we have amongst the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. That we've been able to slash the homicide rates and the violent crime rates in the state of Maryland, where Baltimore now is the fastest drop of homicides of almost any major American city in this country. We've done it because we've moved bipartisan. We've done it because we've moved and built bridges. We've done it in partnership with the Biden administration, and I'm excited for another 4 years to have a chance to work with President Biden.
What about if your name was offered as a possible replacement? Should there something happen at the convention? How would you feel about that? Do you think you're ready?
I think that President Biden is not just the nominee. President Biden is the best candidate for the presidency, and it's the reason I'm supporting him, and the reason that I look forward to engaging all throughout the campaign season to get him reelected.
I know
they're really.
And I'm. Oh. No, our screen's still up. Oh, I'm sorry.
Desperate to push this narrative.
We have a new young mayor out here. I mean, maybe he'll be the next transportation secretary now.
What, the new
he's
young
governor?
Yeah, he's governor.
Oh, I thought he was mayor. Oh, sorry.
Never mind. Keep an eye out for this for Wes Moore. He's
the bridge stuff. He has handled.
Yes.
that.
And he just pardoned 175,000 people of marijuana convictions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry,
He's
my brain
definitely
shortage.
an up and comer.
Yes. Yes.
We mentioned some policies that the Biden administration is doing that are commendable. Certainly, the change in policy about allowing asylum seekers in the country reprehensible, and I hope it gets overturned. The ACLU is pursuing a legal case against it. And from what I've read, in response to the backlash from that, Biden has unveiled this policy. Let's let him talk about this parole in place policy, which is going to impact 550,000 up to 550,000 either people married, immigrants married, undocumented immigrants married to a U.S. citizen, or the kids of an undocumented immigrant married to a U.S. citizen.
For those wives or husbands and their children who have lived in America for a decade or more but are undocumented, this action will allow them to file a paperwork for legal status in the United States, allow them to work while they remain with their families in the United States. Let's be clear, this action still requires undocumented spouses to file all required legal paperwork to remain in the United States. It requires them to pass a criminal background checks, and it doesn't apply to anyone trying to come here today. It only applies, this action is a better way. It doesn't tear families apart while requiring every undocumented spouse to fulfill their obligations under the law. Look, the actions I'm announcing today will go into effect later this summer. And by the way, just as was true for the protection of dreamers, the steps I'm taking today are overwhelmingly supported by the American people, no matter what the other team says. In fact, polls show over 70% of Americans support this effort to keep families together.
You get a little glimpse of what the theory is here by the administration. Now, first off, it is a huge, huge life-changing event for 500,000 people. So it's a very big deal. There are also, as a political matter, when you are looking to win Arizona and Nevada and the polls are against you, you're going to impact the lives directly of like close to 10,000 in each state.
Yeah.
Supposedly. So that's going to make a big deal. But what I've read now is that the Biden people are thinking like this is going to allow Biden during the first debate to create some type of distance between Trump and Biden's policies in immigration, because Biden's border policy, not identical to Trump's, but pretty close. And this one is going to allow Biden to basically say, we're protecting families that exist. But
we're closing the border.
We're closing the border. And it's going to allow him to sort of like have his, provide some of his sort of like xenophobia and whatnot in terms of the border. But then he's going to be able to turn around and say, people can make their own assessment as to what the value of the trade-off here. But he's going to turn around and say, and unlike you, who separated families, I am keeping 1 million families intact,
exactly.
Right? I mean,
but I'm closing the border to stop the hordes of people coming. This is classic Biden centrist triangulation,
yeah.
Right? Where he can craft that narrative at the debate. That's also, I would say, the impetus for this push for the ceasefire at the same time as well, where he can say, I've got this under control by next Thursday.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean, well, he's botched it up to this point, but that is really, I think, like the move that we're going to start to see now, where he wants to be able to, at the 11th hour, say, I've done all of these things and differentiate himself from Donald Trump, from the center to the crazy.
This is going to, I mean, I think once he's in a position to make this distinction, we'll see. But the other thing that bothers me, this is a tiny thing, but why is he referring to the Republicans as the other team? This is so anachronistic. Isn't there anybody on his staff who can say, President Biden, I just want you to know, it is not 1995.
Yeah.
We don't have to not, like, all of the media training at that time was you don't refer to the Republicans by name.
Meanwhile, they're like, Democrat, rat. Do you hear rat?
I call them the loony lying left liberal Democrats.
Socialist,
communist. Like Donald Trump being like so polite, like, if you listen to the other team, they're not going to tell you the truth about this. I mean, it's just
I mean, MAGA Republicans is even an extension of that, right? You could have just called them Republicans, but it's like, I don't want to demonize all
call them
Republicans.
Conservative extremists, Republicans. I mean, it's just all, like the other team.
I mean, he's so disinclined to name them usually. There are sometimes where he'll go after like Ron Johnson or Marjorie Taylor Greene, but like even he's sometimes disinclined to mention people who have touted his programs from the Inflation Reduction Act. He's like, I have a list of them. I'm like, read them name by name.
Of course.
Like, literally take 10 minutes and name all of them for taking credit for stuff that they didn't vote for.
It's unreal.
This is really interesting. I sort of wonder if we shouldn't wait for Matt with this. This Tim Pool thing.
Then
we
wait for
do this
Matt.
on Friday because it's not.
Well, you're not in
it's
on
not-
Friday.
Oh,
You
right.
have
I got the graduation.
solved graduation. Congratulations.
Well, maybe you guys should talk about it. Then you can talk about it tomorrow as well. It's just interesting to watch Tim Pool try and sort of differentiate himself from the full-on white supremacist.
No, that's good. I was about to say, give us a topic that's not about Israel, and then I see Tim Pool's talking about Israel.
Right. It really is more in the context of, yeah. All right, well, let's read some IMs, and then we got to get going. Ramona Frankenstein. I genuinely think anyone arguing Biden should switch VPs for someone else to make people more comfortable voting for him is just a racist. Also, imagine how completely brain dead you have to be to think it's a good idea to remove Kamala from the ticket, depressing the vote from black women, the most consistent constituency for Democrats. I'm so sick of these racist libs, goddammit. Well, let me just say this. There's really not a lot of evidence that there is a particular affinity from black women for Kamala Harris in terms of like the polling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the case.
He was considering other black women for his vice president, who I think we all had stronger, better feelings about, right?
That said, the idea of removing anybody from the ticket just shows panic and weakness,
Exactly.
and it's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Biden could say, like, I got a diagnosis and I owe it to the American public to, you know, step down and put, it just.
I don't think Kamala Harris helps or harms the ticket. I mean, that's really my assessment. I don't think she helps in
100%.
any meaningful way. I don't think she hurts in any meaningful way. She's fine. She's basically like, I describe her as a Democratic fundraiser dinners, ideal candidate. I mean, she's perfect for that kind of crowd, and that's fine enough.
Militant apathy, 1,000%. It's mad respectful. WTF she done to make liberals so stupid. Black people lined up for Fetterman. I'm not sure what that means, but let's see. Iowa Ryan. I read that one. El Conniption. Chomsky alive. Yes. Mill Rind. Matt Gaetz is Eddie Munster's doppelganger. Everyone was thinking it. You know, this whole Matt Gaetz thing, like as far as I'm concerned, I love the idea of this internecine fighting amongst Republicans. So I'm not terribly upset about them keeping, attacking Matt Gaetz because they're mad because of the whole McCarthy thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that he's the only person in Congress who has paid someone for sex, he's been cleared by the DOJ of any criminal wrongdoing. The Ethics Committee obviously has a lower threshold, but it's the fourth investigation. I mean, this is clearly like a payback for the McCarthy thing, but it's both enjoyable to watch Republicans attack Republicans in this respect, and I hope that it further fractures them in some fashion. But it also shows, like, Republican establishment, Democratic establishment, neither one of them is going to tolerate the type of stuff that Gaetz did. Gaetz was able to get McCarthy out. And I have here in this cup exactly what he got from that in terms of material substance. There it is. Well, one drop. Actually, it was one drop more than what he got. They ended up getting the Ukraine funding. They ended up getting like everything that supposedly he was going to do. And now the guy's coalition is getting the head of the Freedom Caucus is like about to lose his seat.
Yeah.
Gaetz is completely incapable of doing anything because he's spending all his time, dealing with ethics violations that you may or may not think are either real or warranted or any different than what anybody else is doing in Congress, frankly. I interviewed, I think, some sex workers in the run-up to the RNC in 2004, and they were just like through the roof when the Republicans come to town. And so that's just you're always walking a line. And if you're going to go for the king, as it were, in terms of McCarthy, you got to do it for a reason. Otherwise, you're just blowing out your any type of political cachet you have. And now it may help him get reelected in his district. I don't know, but there's no value to what his ideological positions are, if there are any, for his ideological supporters for what he did in the final analysis. It was just dumb. It was just grandstanding.
He got fundraising off of it. That's really, I think, probably what he wanted. And then they're trying to send a message that even in that good race, you're not going to use leadership for political stunts for your own gain. So we'll punish you.
Fizzy drinks. Respect to Ali Samaraco for staying this close to Roger Stone. I'm sure the smell was unbearable, and her ass is probably still sore from all the pinching.
Oh. Ow.
Gageson. Fun fact, Eric Adams is an anagram of sad crime, of a sad crime. After watching clips of the debate between Bowman and Latimer, why do I suddenly have the urge to rewatch Young Frankenstein and/or Silent Movie?
Oh, gosh. I didn't get that second one, but I know Young Frankenstein.
Well, what's his face? The guy who played Feldman, with the actor. Not Corey Feldman. No. There's an actor, he's a famous comedic actor. I can't remember his name now, who's in both those movies, who has a wandering eye.
I'm not going to know that actor's name, no.
No. Marty Feldman, yes. Lori's Guide, did you guys already talk about the report from Reuters? I think it was U.S. disinformation campaign in the Philippines against Chinese COVID vaccine. I'm just shocked. Oh, yeah, no, it's amazing. We'll go into that maybe on Tuesday of next week, or I'll find more time. I literally have printed out the story every day. I've done notes on it. Then I forgot. I put the story away and then had to redo it. It's crazy. The U.S. government, the Defense Department, in an attempt to punish China, who were selling their COVID vaccine to the Philippines, started a disinformation campaign on Twitter and other social media saying, don't trust the Chinese COVID vaccine, at a time where the Philippines were already having trouble dealing with COVID. And it's impossible to know how many people died because of this, but probably tens of thousands, because there was no uptake on the vaccine, and probably also indirectly fed the anti-vax campaign here.
Yes, of course. It's not confined to other countries when you do that kind of thing.
We'll get to it. Nick from Tampa. One for Emma, Daily Beast, how the NFL's worst ever owner is blocking movie showing rapist to Trump. Oy, oy, oy.
Wait, who? Wait, can I guess who the worst ever owner is? Are you talking about David Tepper?
I don't know.
Now I got to know.
Mr. Melancholy, I can't believe we're still dealing with Hillary Clinton nonsense. I know.
Oh, Snyder. He's not an owner anymore, but...
Tomoff Link. Happy Friends Day Wednesday, folks. Here in Britain, Tory donor John Caldwell has publicly backed the Labour Party, explaining his decision. Caldwell said Starmer has, and I quote, taken all the left out of the Labour Party, and he's come out with a set of values and principles in complete alignment with my views as a commercial capitalist. It just gets more and more horrific. Chris Burdick. I think he's earned the designation friend of show, Thomas Friedman.
Oh gosh.
When I made an RIP post for Noam Chomsky on Facebook when we all thought he was dead, and a friend of mine who was a Zionist now living in Israel said she couldn't personally mourn him because he was a bad Jew, which confused me because I only thought Ben Shapiro, Pope of the Jews, had the authority to decide on which ones were bad. The Ben Shapiro wants his tall hat back, the little Pope hat he wears. Incidentally, I don't think it's a particularly good Jew thing to do, to specifically not mourn him because he didn't support Zionism. But who knows? Holton Brain. I wonder what Sam forgot so that his brain could finally store what CNC machine meant. Well, it was written out for the first time. So Virginia brand canned meats are absolutely not halal. Ryan from Rochester, full abolition came in New York State July 4th, 1827, but freed black New Yorkers celebrated the emancipation on July 5th because the 4th was seen as for whites, hence later Frederick D's speech reflecting this sentiment. Interesting. I don't think I knew that. John from Teaburg, love that we live in a world where the phrase Joan Rivers died in 2014 must be followed by, so she would not have been able to vote in 2016. Lockheed Farton, Vergonia. Shantastic from NY. Andrew shows he understood the spirit of the assignment because his flag literally has open borders. Draw Nathan. Apparently, Vergonia also mean private parts in Italian, so maybe Martha should stick it to those degenerates across the lagoon by adding some images of male genitalia to her flag. That'll show them. Oh, my God. Charlie Jerk. Are y'all taking calls today? It does not look like it. Sam's tortured analogies. I'm old enough to remember when a different Martha Mitchell, was the standard of bat crap. All right, 5 more. Mr. Papa. While you're checking flag submissions, look for flags in the subject line. Good idea. Omega. Biden needs to stop talking because he's continuing policies that saw the father of two of my brothers get deported without much notice. This week, the younger one of them graduated high school, so he was unable to be there to have that moment with them. I hate this dog shit from out of touch old people in office. I'm sorry about that. Horrible. DSA Aaron in Atlanta. Emma Jordy report tomorrow. Best day of the week when we get Gramps to stay home. LOL. Love
Hey,
you, Sam.
hey.
Yeah.
He's not a grandpa yet.
No. Let's hope not. Winnie from Phoenix. Hi, Sam and Emma. Can I please get a shofar? My non-binary partner proposed to me, a trans woman, a few weeks ago. Thanks in advance.
Oh, that's amazing.
Congratulations. Needless to say, I said yes. Chicago Steve. I don't know what that means. And the final I am of the day. Land Shark. And here I thought dead people always voted Democrat.
I know.
Joan Rivers.
Oh.
Bradley, good job solo today. Emma, great job today. Matt, in absentia, great job today. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I get somewhere I lost my drive,